Hi guys, hope you're having a great day and looking forward to Night Earth series. This time we're going to be looking at one of the biggest line, the sharpest line, most complicated line, Bishop G5. So the idea is clear. White wants to poison black pawn structure with Bishop F6. So I think black's next move, Knight Bd7, is completely clear. Of course, black has many alternatives. E6 is one of the main line, but for today we're going to be looking at Knight Bd7, which I like the most. Knight Bd7. This line actually was out of business in old times because of Bishop C4. But new ideas have been found, new resources have been found, so let's try to look at it. Queen b6 attacks the b2 pawn, and the d4 knight keeps an eye on d4 knight, right? White has a big list of choice now. Queen d2, sacrificing the pawn, being aggressive. Bishop b3, protecting the b2 pawn. And knight b3, which I think is not dangerous for black. It's just no big deal. Knight himself retreats from the central square, so black just can play e6, develop, castle, queen c7. It's very important to know that right now the queen is standing a bit awkwardly on b6. We always need to retreat the queen on c7 and advance the b pawn. So queen e2, b5, bishop d3, bishop b7, f4. So white directly starts to push. Bishop e7, rook a d1, castle. Black developed normally. So king h1, rook e8, very useful move because sometimes we might need bishop f8 or knight f8, and the most important is that after e5 the rook stands very good on e8, keeps an eye on e4 pawn. So after a3, rook c8, also useful move, comes on the open file. And I have to say that this position was reached in my game against Polish women grandmaster Jolanta Zawadzka, and I remember that here I had two moves in my mind, d5 or e5. I miscalculated something and in my game d5 was played, but the correct way to play in this position is e5, like rook f3, h6, bishop h4, and e5. So we can see that if white advances the pawn to f5, the typical d5 breakthrough comes, and black is totally comfortable. So I hope you're gonna learn on my mistakes. Let's get back to queen b6 and bishop b3. Well, we can look at queen d2, aggressive pawn sacrifice. So now it's clear that white wants to castle long. So black has to accept the sacrifice. Queen b2, rook b1, queen a3, castle. Now black has a lot of moves. Queen a5, queen c5, and e6. I consider that the queen moves are very risky, so e6. We have to develop. Right now, white has to be quick. It was first played bishop e6. I think we remember from our previous video, this Sazin line, that this bishop on c4 is not so good. And often he sacrifices himself on e6. So that's the moment. Bishop e6. We accept the sacrifice. Knight e6. Knight c7 is the threat. Queen a5 covers the c7 threat. I think every move is logical. f4. Here is an important moment. White has to play f4. For example, if white is a little bit scared of this diagonal, that black can give checks at some point and plays king h1 instead, then black is in time to attack the knight on e6 and knight has to get back on d4. So after bishop e7, black is totally fine. They have extra piece and doing great. So f4, the idea is also to protect the knight on e6 or to advance with e5. King f7 anyway. Now if f5, it's a little bit risky for white because now we can see that e5 square is under black's control. So after bishop e7, queen e3, rook e8, black is doing perfectly, but we have to remember that we don't have to be very greedy. Queen g3, knight c5. Now we ask white where the knight goes. Knight g7, sacrificing on g7. And here you have to pay attention that we should not accept all white's gifts. For example, if king g7, it does not work because of brilliant idea, bishop f6, king f6, knight d5, king has to go back, f6, queen g7 is the threat, bishop goes back, and can you guess here what move wins? Pause the video, take your time. You did it? Okay, let me tell you. Queen g8, a perfect move. King has to take on g8, f7, king comes back, and white promotes the queen and wins the rook. So I hope you liked this line, but knight g7 is not the end of the world for black. Rook g8. Now we can see that white is in trouble. g7, knight is hanging. It's going to be under pin, the bishop on g5. So black is winning here. Now let's see e5. Seems a little bit scary move, but the knight on e6 is not protected. King e6. King h1. Wow, what a move, right? I mean, in the mind, it first comes the captures to attack the king. King is in the center. And white goes king h1? Well, sometimes we have to remember that it's important that in this type of position, white just goes slowly and asks black where the king goes. The king in the center is not safe. And king h1 is very useful move for white because it goes out of checks. But fortunately it's not dangerous for black. King f7, rook e1 comes to attack the king. h6, bishop h4, and d takes e5. takes, knight takes. Here's a brilliant idea, and in the game, instead of d takes e5, knight b6 was played. I assume that black were afraid of this line, bishop f6, g takes f6, rook f6. We can see the rook f6 idea that king f6 is not possible. Why? Because of knight e4, and now queen is hanging. So king goes back to g7, rook f1, a very typical idea, doubles the rook on f-file, bishop e7, queen f4. Now, what white wants is rook f7, mating the king. So we have an awesome idea. Pay attention to this move. Bishop f5. Do you guess what is the idea? The idea is that black is connecting the rooks so that any capture on f5 is replied by rook f8, and black is winning. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let's get back to queen d2. Sorry. Queen d2, queen b2, and after some moves e6, right? So, it was played bishop d5. Interesting move. This bishop is simply naughty. Sacrifices himself on e6 or going on d5. I think the best way here, of course for detailed analysis you can look through the PGN, but let me show you the shortest way. ed, rook e1, h6. This is an important move because, okay, white has many moves, e takes d5, but they are not dangerous for black. So let me show you just one idea. If white goes back to h4, g5, takes on d5, king d8, and king is totally safe because now we can see that the bishop is not attacking the king on d8. So bishop d5 is not so dangerous. And let's go back to other lines. Queen b6, bishop b3. Now white has two ideas, either to castle short, either on a long side. e6. Castle short is not dangerous for black, just normal development after bishop e7. We have to watch out actually that we don't have to play queen c7, for example, after a4 or bishop e3. We have to be careful that queen c7 comes under bishop e6, f takes e6, and knight e6. So first what we do is we protect the e6 pawn, come knight c5, and the idea is queen c7, castle, and b5. So bishop e3, knight c5, as we mentioned, f4, queen goes back, queen f3, b5. A typical structure. f5, white pushes, knight b3, c takes b3, castle, f takes e6, f takes e6, and queen h3. This is not dangerous at all for black because after e5 they have concrete play. Knight f5, b4, and we can see that e4 pawn is very weak. So black is doing totally fine. Now let's go to e6 and see what happens if white castles long. Queen d2, bishop e7, long castle. The same ideas, we have to start with knight c5, It also attacks the e4 pawn, so f3 supports the e4 pawn, queen c7, king b1. This is a usual move. King goes to safe place, so castle, we have time for castle, and g4. Now it is typical position for knight f. Black is attacking on the queen side, white is attacking on the king side. So, b5, a3. a3 prevents b4, but at some point it can be a weakness also, because black anyway comes rook b8, bishop d7, a5, b4, but let's see, let's demonstrate it on the board. So rook b8, h4, bishop d7. So the idea is a5, b4. Bishop f6. White wants the same, to advance the pawns. Bishop f6, g5. Bishop goes back, h5. a5, g6. It looks scary, but it's not, fortunately, dangerous for black. In Sheriff Dominguez's game, knight b3 was played, and after knight b3, f takes g6, h takes g6, h6, black was in trouble after knight a5. So, of course, we don't need this. And after g6, bishop comes to support the king. G takes h7. We don't need this pawn. King h8. h6, g6. Now we see that the king on h8 is totally safe. The bishop on f6 is perfectly supporting the king. And who's in danger? Of course, white. After b4, black has very, very comfortable play. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. You need to remember the lines. You have to be alert and you have to be good at calculating. Just don't be afraid. Feel the position and everything is going to be okay. Thank you for watching.